James Cleverly has done an interview on Sky News, and I think it's worth listening to the whole of the interview because it's fascinating. I will interrupt it if you don't mind. But to start with, do look out for the point where he talks about his predecessor and names his predecessor as Robert Jenrick. Surely his predecessor was Suella Braverman, but she is maybe somebody he wants to forget. That is interesting. He and others would like to forget Suella Braverman. But, the other thing which I think is important to remember is that Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman were deliberately, I think Jenrick has actually said it, were deliberately not, or going slow, invoking this concept of the hostile environment in order to keep the limbo state of people held in hotels as effective hostages as itself a form of deterrent. And this only changed towards the latter part of Suella Braverman's tenure, and something that Cleverly has picked up and has, in a sense, benefited from. He can bring out this, quote, good news. But it's good news which is so difficult to actually understand, and it is very amusing to hear the Sky interviewer recognise the fact that she doesn't really understand all the figures. The figures are baffling, and that is how this interview begins. Listen to it and enjoy. I will interrupt.
Pleased to say the Home Secretary is with us, James Cleverly. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Kate.
Thanks for joining us. Now, you're going to try and baffle me with some figures. I'm going to try and keep up. Here we go. 112,000 asylum cases have been cleared. How many are left to clear?
Well, that figure will depend on how many new applications come through. We had
As of today?
So, as of today, I've not had the chance to have a look at this morning's figures. When I go to the office later on, I'll get an update. No, so the figures, as I say, I'm not going to guess because we'll see what applications have come over across the Christmas and New Year period. So later on, I'll get an update. But the point is, last year, we processed 112,000 applications. That includes contemporary applications that have come in year, but also that legacy backlog that we committed to clear, and we have. That is the largest number of applications processed in any year since 2002. So in over 20 years, that's the highest number we've processed.
How many of those 112,000 have been allowed to stay?
Well, the grant rate has been around 67%,
88,000.
which is down on the previous year and indeed the year before that in terms of a percentage. So actually, we're seeing fewer people getting grants, and actually, in the changes that we've made to legislation, we'll be tightening our criteria. So we envisage that grant rate coming down even further.
But as of today, of the 112,000, only 24,000 returned. Is that right?
Well, look, it's so last year we returned 24,000.
That's less than a third, isn't it?
It's not necessarily the case that it's of that 112,000 applications, because there will be some that were that were refused or not granted asylum previously, who are in that 24,000. So it's not as easy to say it's 24,000 of that number.
One figure we can agree with is the 17,000 plus that seem to have just sort of disappeared. Where have they gone?
Well, some of them will have left. Last year we saw a two-thirds...
They all haven't.
Probably not all of them, but a number of them will have done so.
How could that have happened?
Well, because, I mean, unsurprisingly, if people think they're going to be unsuccessful, sometimes they slip out of the system. Sometimes they return home. Sometimes they slip into illicit working, which is one of the reasons why we've increased the number of raids on illegal employment. And that's also one of the reasons, because we've increased the number of raids, we've also seen a two-thirds increase, a 66% increase in the number of people that we are sending back home. So whether...
67%, all these numbers, I know I was never any good at maths, 67% of those that you've processed are allowed to stay.
Yes, because they've come from war-torn countries. But also what we are doing is we've put in place now tougher legislation. So as we move forward with this process, we will have a tighter set of criteria than we had in the past. We should see that proportion of grants probably coming down, and we are taking action, and we are continuing to take action to secure our borders and stop the boats.
But we don't know where these 17,000 people are.
Well, as I say, some of them would have left, some of them would have slipped into the illicit economy. It's not possible to say exactly where, because people, unsurprisingly, if they think they're going to be refused asylum, consciously slip out of the system.
Got a very good chance of not being refused asylum.
But the point being, we go looking for them. Okay. Our enforcement rates have increased, and a two-thirds increase has meant that, well, as I say, we returned 24,000 people last year.
This issue was in fact brought up by Tim Lawton, the MP, at the beginning of December in a committee. And he asked, what has happened to the 17,316? And Scott Ridley, who was the Home Office minister fielded to answer these questions, says, I don't know. The point is that the Home Office's obsession with deterrence is perhaps working. If people believe that they're not going to get a fair hearing through the official channels, through the Home Office, then of course they're going to abscond, enter the black economy, disappear. What about those children who disappeared, that huge number of children who disappeared from the secure accommodation, from the hotels where they were staying? And nobody knows. The Home Office doesn't know. The Home Office can't track down people. So James Cleverly's rather absurd retort that the Home Office is increasing random inspections, I don't think is going to be it doesn't hold very much water, does it really? This is a Home Office minister, the Home Office minister, who has not advanced since the beginning of December with this question. This question was on the table at the beginning of December. What about the 17,316? I notice it's been rounded down.
You did, and 88,000 remained. You brought down the numbers by deploying an additional 1,200 caseworkers. What was stopping you doing that previously?
Well, I don't know. I can only deal
with. That's an honest answer.
So I can only deal with the department that I took over when I was appointed.
Should have been done earlier then.
When I was appointed Home Secretary. Well,
on the 9th of August, in another Sky News interview, Robert Jenrick was asked, why does it take 1 to 3 years to process claims in the UK, whereas it only takes 6 months in Germany? And Jenrick said, there are those saying that if you process claims quickly, that will fix it. That's a naive view, he says. That just encourages more people to come. So in other words, taking more time is itself a deterrent. It's a deliberate decision. It goes back to Theresa May, who was the first to articulate the hostile environment that I think probably she picked that up. She inherited that herself. But the hostile environment is a euphemism for delay, tardiness, laziness, going slow. It is deliberate. And changing that is also deliberate. There's no reason to be keeping people in hotels.
I think that it's worked. It has worked. We got.
You asked?
Well, when I got there, we had a very, very, I think, a very effective leadership, real targets. I pay tribute actually to Robert Jenrick, my predecessor, who was in large part responsible for some of these changes. We saw more people, better processes, stronger leadership, real targets and accountability. And what we saw was a very significant increase in the speed with which we processed these applications with no loss of quality. And as I say, I pay tribute to Robert for very much driving that forward.
He should have got more caseworkers earlier, shouldn't he?
Well, look, we've seen it worked. So now we know it works.
Yes,
it's going to stay in place. And as we process applications in the future, we have now got the larger number of people and a better process.
Why do you not want to say, yes, he should have done it earlier?
Well, look, because I'm not going to criticise stuff that I wasn't directly involved in.
I mean,
but the point is, Rob was responsible for putting this process in place. It's an effective process, and it's done exactly what we wanted it to do by clearing that backlog.
How many Albanians who arrived on small boats have been returned in 2022 and 2023?
Well, last year we returned over 5,000 Albanians. I don't have the figure for the previous year, but last year is up on previous years. And actually, because of the work that we're doing with Albania, dissuading people from leaving in the first place, returning those people who have arrived here, sharing intelligence with the Albanian authorities. And I hosted the Albanian Interior Minister as one of my first meetings when I became Home Secretary. We've seen a 90% reduction in Albanian small boat arrivals, which I think is a real success story.
Yeah, a 30-odd% down, isn't it, on people arriving on small boats? So
in general, 36% actually.
There you go.
We've got the updated figures.
There you go.
So the numbers have come down.
I'm glad to hear it. So we don't really need to waste 240 million quid giving money to Rwanda.
Well, look, I've always said that Rwanda is part of a wider plan. Rwanda has an incredibly important deterrent effect, not just to people coming from other places.
Like?
So we will. Well, people try to come here from all over the world. We've got a very good relationship with Albania, and it is working. We're building similar relationships with other countries across Europe.
And as a result, we're down 36%.
Yes, indeed. But I am determined to make sure that we stop the boats completely. And that means working with international partners, including France, including Albania, including Romania and other countries around Europe. It means breaking the business model of those people smugglers. But it also means having a meaningful deterrent. And the Rwanda plan is part of that deterrent. No one element. Well, it will deter. And we know it's already having an element of deterrent.
It is indeed. It's sending people into the black economy. It's stopping people actually hanging around in their hotels to be processed. They're giving up, they're going off and they're doing odd jobs around the country and they're hiding. Of course they are. It is having a deterrent effect, just not the one you intend.
Before it's fully up and running, because we interview people when they arrive, when they put forward applications for asylum, and they tell us that other people that were planning to come to the UK have chosen not to because of the deterrent effect of Rwanda, and that's before it's even fully up and running. It's not apocryphal. It is the interviews. It is what people tell us when we interview them. Now, the point is, once it is up and running, it will have an even stronger deterrent effect,
and it will
be added. It will add to the other areas of work that we have put in place that are also having an effect. So it's the combination of these things. No one element on its own. It's the combination of things.
OK. I know you to be a good bloke. So what happened with this Rohypnol stuff?
Oh, look, that was...
Just clarify it for us.
Yes, look, it was a joke that I made, and of course, I regret it and I apologised immediately. That apology is heartfelt. But the point that I've made is that as Home Secretary, I was the first Home Secretary to put forward legislation to toughen our ability to deal with spiking. My first visit as Home Secretary was to an investigation team investigating violence against women and girls. When I was Foreign Secretary, I set a target that 80% of our aid has got to demonstrably have a positive effect for women and girls. I shouldn't have said it, and I apologised immediately. And as I say, that apology heartfelt.
Because you trusted a journalist, or was it because it was an off-colour remark that you're sorry?
Well, I'm sorry because it's clearly caused hurt. And that's the last thing I wanted to do. It's potentially distracted from the work that we were doing to tackle spiking, to help predominantly women who are the victims of spiking. And I regret that. But I'm absolutely determined to continue the work, which I've been doing for years, both as Foreign Secretary and straight away as Home Secretary. I've told the department it is absolutely a priority for me to improve the protection of women and girls.
How much trouble were you in with Mrs. C when you got home?
Well, look, you know her well. You've had the chance to meet her. You know what an amazing woman she is. And that was part of the joke that I was making. But she has always been incredibly supportive of me. She's also very honest.
She must have been very cross with you.
In terms of her feedback. But she also knows...
What did she say?
I'm not going to go into detail, but she also knows...
Was she cross?
She also knows how completely committed I am to this issue.
Was she cross?
No, she wasn't cross. She was always supportive.
I'm sure she is. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, Kate.
Thanks very much indeed.